Hello and welcome to another Code Remix Weekly. We are your regular hosts, Sam, that's me, and Tim, that's him. How you doing, Tim?
Just fine, just fine. How are you?
Doing all right. I just got back from a camping trip where we went south in Washington to near Mount St. Helens, which is a
Hmm.
volcano that famously exploded back in the 80s, leaving a wake of devastation around it. Evidence of which can still be seen today, 45 years later, in the graveyard of trees that swirls around the lake at nearest the base of that mountain. And when we were up near it on a high hill, we could look around and see four four full volcanoes in the distance. You know, there was Adams, Rainier, Mount St. Helens, and the other one whose name I forget at the moment. But it was a pretty spectacular spot. Beautiful countryside. Uh, I think I might have heard that pack of wolves that had called out to you at your campsite at one point. But figuring that since they didn't attack you, then that they might be your friends, I said that I was Tim's friend, and no wolves attacked me. So it all worked out. How about you?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Uh, my plans were quite a bit more tame, I would say. I had a
No wolf
mountain biking
packs?
session.
Oh,
No, no,
good.
no. No. Oh, well, we do have one wolf that is attacking folks in the Netherlands. So if you now go mountain biking,
Ah,
actually there's some. Be careful a bit. Don't go there. And then, but yeah, no, no such
so what?
fun. So
So when you mountain bike, I've never gone mountain biking. Well, never on a proper mountain. I've ridden a bike around in the woods a little bit before. Uh, do you? I've heard various things from different mountain bikers. Do you like going up the hills more or down the hills more?
down. I would
Down.
say just we have a lot of nice single tracks here nearby. Where just there's a lot of angled curves going down, and then pretty fun. So
So you're sure the wolf attacks in Netherlands haven't been because of mountain bikers like you chasing them out of their forests?
no. It's just I think there was one lone wolf that at some point started to grab like small dogs, and now has upgraded to kids, and that's the
Oh
point where
wow.
the news is picking up. So.
Yeah. Very exciting. Very exciting. Well, what announcements do we have for this week, Tim?
Well, we finally managed to do a full release ahead of this call today, so I'm quite pleased. So let me
Wow.
bring that up. That would be this screen. And with that, we have the beginnings of some very neat stuff. Like last week, we already spoke about the inline me annotation recipe that we now have to be able to define deprecations that we want to push forward and have those replaced automatically. That is now officially part of Open Rewrite Rewrite. So you can tag that annotation anywhere that you want, or roll your own and tag that somewhere, and we will figure out the replacements that we need to do there. So quite pleased with that.
I think that's a really cool idea. You want to show the people a quick example of that because I think it is really neat, even if it's just like pulling up the
Yeah,
test
sure.
case. 'Cause it's a slightly different way of opting into programmatic transformation and modernization of your code. And I wonder if there might not be more ideas on this theme to explore further as we go. Like it could even can we zoom in this text a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Nice.
So what
So
I've done in this case is we have an annotation, the change dependency, which has a number of arguments, and all it does really is delegate to the next one, which is the one that we actually want you to use instead. And then, of course, what been doing for years is just tag on like a deprecated annotation or something, but that doesn't really motivate folks well enough, we found. Whereas adding this inline me annotation, which is pretty much a copy of the contents of the constructor, that is enough for it to become a recipe that gets those replacements going. So
And so this what we're seeing here in the argument to this annotation more or less ends up the input parameter to a Java template, right? Of like we use
absolutely,
a
yep,
you so the way the recipe works is it looks at the thing annotated, or rather the type information associated with that constructor retains that annotation and its arguments, so that even without a scanning recipe, anywhere that constructor is detected, we can produce its replacement and swap that right in.
absolutely, yeah. So
That's
that's
that's that's really cool, Tim. I wonder what else we could do along these kind of lines. because it's frequent that a lot of what we deal with is how do you make it so that code can continue to change? How do you keep things up to date? There's one small but slightly annoying problem, one thing in the open rewrite code base that this isn't quite applicable to, but I wonder if we might be able to come up with something that would do it. And it's a small thing, but there's a few places in our API where there's a function that accepts a unary operator, right? And the unary operator is the
Hmm.
Java functional type where some T goes into it and another T comes out of it. Then many of the places where we have these, the nullability of the T coming in and the T coming out are different. Like no null, you're allowed to return null, but no null will ever be passed in is the case. And you can express that with function and the JSpecify nullable annotations. But the Java compiler, when two functional interfaces can potentially match, always chooses the one with fewer type parameters. So we would have, if we remove the unary operators, it would be a source compatible change, so it would just start using the function one, but a binary incompatible change because they would be looking for a function with a different signature. And so I wonder if there's something we could do to fix that. Like it's not quite an inline me, but it's like, hey, everywhere that there's an invocation of this unary operator thing, like add a cast to like, no, I want to call the function version, and then after a while could remove the unary operator. Anyway, just thinking out loud about this is a really neat idea that hadn't occurred to me before. Uh, where did you get the inspiration to do this, Tim? Because this is a change you came up with and contributed.
Yes, so this is been another one of those passion projects of mine where I just, I don't know, on like slow evenings, weekends, I work
Yeah,
on the things. Once upon a time that brought us free faster, and now we have the inline me annotation.
yeah.
Inspiration for this one is I stole it. It's very much something. It's already in the error prone tool from Google. And of course,
Uh-huh.
we had a speaker from Google at our Code Remix Summit this past May. And he extolled the virtues of having this type of annotation, which you just slap on there, then have an automation run to do all those replacements. And then as a last step, removes the method when it knows that it's no longer being called anywhere. And I
Yeah,
thought that is really neat. We should have something like that or exactly
yeah,
that. And
yeah.
now we
In
do.
in some ways, this could be better, as with the Google setup. They have a big monolith, and that wouldn't work beyond the boundaries of a monolith the way that this
No.
could. Recipes are very much designed for a multi to operate in a multi-repository environment to make it feel like an eventually consistent monolith. So in some ways, you've not only copied this good idea, but by virtue of where you implemented it, extended it to be applicable in contexts that the original iteration of the idea was not. So I say to you, bravo, Tim. This is excellent.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a fun one. There was quite a lot of moving pieces before it finally all fit together, and now I'm
Gelled.
just happy to have it. So
Yeah.
that
What
is
were what were the other announcements we had? I got distracted because this one excited me.
all good. All good. So the other one is for the folks that have been following along. The JUnit 6 has been coming out with some release candidates. So there was a last chance release candidate if you want to try things out before the release. So I'm expecting a release somewhere in the coming weeks. And of course, we already have recipes to help you upgrade to JUnit 6. Now, the neat thing here is one of the big changes is that you're going to be required to run on at least Java 17 with JUnit. And that also means that if you have some tests that are only enabled on Java 8 or 11 or within a range that spans those older versions, then those will never run. So you'll have some false sense of security. So as part of our recipes, we're cleaning those up. So if you run these
By cleaning
recipes
those
and
up, you
you
mean deleting them?
yes, they're never going to match. They're never going to run. So yeah, clearing up is just being more vocal about that these will never be executed.
Right.
So yeah. So I found that amusing. Yeah, so we're gonna likely get some pushback the moment that folks start to run these recipes. But I thought I'll have said it here once, and then folks should be aware.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not, everyone important always tunes into this weekly webcast to get their important news on these subjects. So the world has been appropriately warned. Consider that your notice,
Yeah,
everybody.
This has been my one notice. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Tim's coming for your Java 8 unit test. You heard it here first.
So that should be fun. There's been also some underneath the covers types of changes. So you've of course done your rework on the great old dependency model, allowing us to do better replacements there, as well as take into account the platform bombs, everything that we discussed last week. So we
Yep, yep,
don't
yep.
rehash that here. On my end, I've been reworking the way that our refaster recipes work, where you can now use the class path from resources to be able to more reliably match those recipes in any environment. And with that, I
Nice.
mostly mean the Modern CLI and the Modern platform. These recipes will now work quite well there as well.
Good, good.
And that, yeah. And it builds upon some additions to the type tables that we recently did, where if you
Nice.
had a type that was annotated with something and you needed that as part of your recipes, that now feeds in as well.
Having the annotations in the type tables will also help that inline me recipe to work better.
Absolutely, yeah. So all of that is now available, and then of course bits in left and right. We've had some folks contribute to extended coverage with the Spring recipes. We'll have some more to tell about that maybe next week. But with that, I'm just very pleased to get this out and go. So if you want to see the full details, I'll share the link. This is not actually the link. This is a local run of the link, but the link is in the docs as well. If you go to docs.openrewrite.org, then you get exactly these notes, provided that it actually completed this. Perfect. So let me share this in the chat. And you'll find that we have some 54 new recipes this week. So there's some new dev centers in there for which is Modern specific things. There's some recipes specifically for Hibernate 7, which will become part of the Spring Boot 4, which comes out in 2 months. So that's something that we're building towards. There's also some deprecations that were part of Spring Boot 3.5, which we've now covered on the Modern side, which will also feed into that Spring Boot 4. And we're behind the scenes working on extended coverage, for instance, on things like Elasticsearch and Kafka to all feed into that Spring Boot 4 that we should be seeing in a couple of months. While also working on the Java 25 support, which hasn't yet made it into this release, but we will have that likely before September 16th next month.
Very nice.
No. And then we've done some reshuffling, so we now have a separate module for our Joda time recipes. So if you were relying on those, which we don't expect you to, you should be able to find it now in a new rewrite Joda module that we have. So that's most of the updates with regards to the new recipes that we have. Beyond that, we also have some events coming up again. It's the slow season of the summer is over. So we will be at 2 events in parallel in 2 weeks, I believe. One is the Gartner conference in London, where we'll have a part of the team attending September 8th through 9th. And we've also have some folks at the JFrog Swamp Hop, which is in Napa, California, in 12 days. So,
I will be one of those folks. So see you there if anyone's swamping it up. And Modern founders and CEO Jonathan are going to be at the Gartner conference in London, so you can say hi to him there.
That's having all our bases covered with in-depth knowledge of Open Rewrite at both of those. Yeah.
Oh.
And then of course next Wednesday, I want to say, is it Wednesday or Tuesday? I think it's Wednesday. We have our next Introduction to Open Rewrite course that you can all follow along to, which is you can register at the new Modern Open Rewrite training hub that we have on our docs, where if you go here, you can sign up for either this European-friendly time zone workshop or the next one in October, which is more US-centric time zone. And then from there, they're paired up with the advanced trainings a week or 2 weeks later as well. So we've planned this all out until the end of the year, and we hope to see you at any of these going forward.
Yeah, should be fun. Last one was fun.
Absolutely. So that's all the updates. What?
Yeah, and now that we've beta tested the training on the first group of attendees, whoever comes now will get to see a more practiced version of it. But enough about the training for now. Let's get to today's main topic, which is our friend and colleague Mark Heckler, a daredevil pilot and adrenaline junkie who, when he's not stuck on the ground with the rest of us, does like to build. When not flying by instruments, he is Senior Director of Field Engineering at Modern, Java champion, conference speaker, and author of Spring Boot Up and Running. So please, everyone, welcome Mark Heckler to the program. How you doing, Mark?
Great. Have to say, I love that daredevil part. Uh, Interestingly enough, I used to actually have on my laptop one of the stickers of Daredevil, from the series. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
yeah, I was saying earlier, I am kind of an adrenaline junkie, but I do it very safely. So I guess there's some kind of balance there. I don't know.
Adrenaline junkie who lives to tell the tale thereafter.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's always the best kind. Anytime someone wishes me a safe flight, those are my favorite kinds of flights. So
Yeah, yeah. Safe flight and crucially a safe landing, right? It's not
yes, 1-to-1.
like
Yep,
it's not, falling never hurt anybody. It's the landing that gets you. So
yep,
that's really the crucial part.
yep. Flying is optional, landing is mandatory. So yeah.
How long have you been flying planes, Mark?
Uh, Officially, probably about 5 years. I mean, I had taken some lessons here and there,
So
but
there
I
was an
never really.
unofficial time when you were flying.
Well, no, 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 no. Let me be clear about that. No, I would take one-off, flights or lessons or whatever, but I never really consolidated it into a license until 5 years ago. So I want to be clear on that.
Because I mean, there was here in Washington where I live, there was a case of a guy who would break into people's houses and indeed steal small planes and fly them, and he didn't know how to land them, but he managed to walk away from a series of crashes. And I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but maybe that was you in a wild era of your youth and a
Uh,
past identity.
No, definitely not. They tell you when you start actually, for honest to goodness, pursuing a license that you get two bags as a pilot. One is your bag of skill, and one is your bag of luck. And the more often you dip into that bag of luck, the lighter it gets,
Uh-huh.
to
And
where
you run
eventually your
out.
luck runs out. So you always want to lean on that skill bag before you lean on the luck bag. So yeah,
That's just good life advice right there. Yeah.
yeah, it is true. Yeah. Yeah, I often joke that so many things that we learn or are able to apply in tech uh,
Hmm.
actually come from other domains, or that we can learn something in tech and apply it elsewhere. So when I went for
Yeah.
my instrument rating, I thought you have to trust the gauges, trust the machine
Uh-huh.
above your eyes, above your inner ear, the sensory balance. That's where people get into trouble because they say, "No, I'm flying straight and level," and you're not. You're in a what they call a death spiral. So you
Yeah.
have to trust your equipment. It's like I was born for this. I mean, my whole life I've been trusting the equipment. I trust the computer more than I trust myself. So it was. I feel like that part of it was far easier than just the private pilot stuff where you're learning, to do the pilotage and dead reckoning and the navigation and stuff like that. So anyway,
Right on. Right on. Well, that's cool stuff. And yeah, knowing knowing the workings of the machine is I find key to trusting it. Uh, got some friends in the chat, Mark. That's nice.
yeah. Well, say hi, Sandra.
Popular guy. Uh, yeah, I when I was going to college for electrical and computer engineering, my father worked for GE Aviation, not as an engineer but as a lawyer. But in that capacity, he would often go to the plants or like check out the tests they did. Because if there was a lawsuit that an engine had exploded when it shouldn't, it could be relevant for the lawyers involved to have some knowledge of what kind of testing the engines went through so that they could speak to it. So he told me once about how he observed a bird strike test on a jet engine, checking how well it would hold up to birds flying into it, which has famously brought down planes before, such as the Miracle on the Hudson with the
Mhm.
Captain Sully, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said that he once went out to an airfield where there was a massive jet engine uh, just attached to the ground, not mounted on a plane. and someone with a truckload of frozen chickens and turkeys straight from the grocery store that were just being catapulted one after the other into an engine running at full blast. He said it was one of the more bizarre things he'd ever seen. But seeing that the engine managed to keep running like that engine passed the bird strike test with a truckload of frozen poultry launched into it, gave him new respect for the for the durability and the safety standards that those engines were held to. Yeah, so that. Go ahead, Tim.
That makes you wonder if you can have a barbecue at the other end of the engine.
By the way,
You
I have to tell
probably
you
could.
though, one small correction: they don't call that an explosion; they call that an unscheduled and rapid disassembly.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I've also heard it called a spontaneous disassembly, but anyway, yeah, that's never a good thing. Yeah,
Never a good thing. Never a good thing. So it's fun talking about poultry striking airplanes and hypotheticals in your adrenaline junkie days, but it has left me struggling to transition into our actual topic, which is something to do with live coding with AI, Spring, real world use cases, something like that. Mark, what is it that you have come on this program today to share with us?
I forget. I don't know. Let me
punt it over to you.
Let me see if I can move this off to the side and then share my other screen. Let's see. So share screen. Yeah, that's fine. Would like to record this computer. Open settings. Oh, so I apparently missed a setting. Hold on. Hopefully, it won't make me restart everything. That would be inconvenient.
Well, if it does, Tim and I could certainly blather for a few minutes while we await your return.
All right. Well, I told it later. We'll see if it works. If not, then we'll know what happened, and then we'll but let's see. Start screen. Oh yeah, I am going to have to bounce out because, of course, it didn't work unless I restart. So I'll be right back.
All right. Very good. We'll see you in a minute.
Yeah, sure. So, of course, the main topic is Spring AI. For those unfamiliar, I can share a quick tab.
Good idea. Way to think on your feet, Tim.
If I can actually find the tab that I have open. But so Spring AI, of course, like a lot of Spring technologies, Spring has another generalization, if you will, across multiple other models and things that you might want to plug in. And Spring AI gives you that unified interface that you know from Spring to have one way to interact and then be able to swap out the components at the back end. Much like you have Spring Data allowing you to use the same interface no matter what backend store you have. You can also use Spring AI to use any of the backend models that you want to use. And like Mark will be much better positioned to tell about all of this. But I'll share this link already for the folks that want to read along.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
We'll see if this works. Hold on. Everyone can see me. Let me move that once again. I missed apparently one slider, so that was enough to do me in here. Share screen. Once again, okay. Entire screen. That looks good. That looks good. Share. Do you see it?
Go.
Good. Okay. Well, then. So sorry. Were you in the middle of something, Tim?
We were just filling time waiting for you to come back, but he was introducing the subject of Spring AI to warm people up for you.
All right. Well, okay. So you can see the slide now, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Can you still see me?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm so
sorry.
Unless
you'd rather we not be able to see you. If you'd prefer to just be a voice, that can be arranged.
Okay. Well, I'm so sorry if you can still see me. If you want to, mute the photo, that's probably better. I have a face.
It does seem between your green shirt and your green background, it is like you're like preparing to be edited out of a video and replaced with
the floating head.
Some other image. Yeah.
Nice. Well, yeah. Interestingly, I gave this talk a different version of it where it was just 100% code at one point, but I really wanted to go to kind of elevate it because I feel like I mean you and I have talked about this a little bit, Tim, yesterday that. So much of what we do, and actually Sam too, just a little while ago, so much of what we do is kind of everybody comes into things at different stages and at different times. So I always hate making the assumption that we're going to start here, and that may be fine for a few people, but I mean, we're all at different points on our journey with literally every tool, every technology, every bit of knowledge that we have. So I always try to provide some context while elevating things as much as possible. So my goal for today is not to cover everything. It's not to end the conversation. It's kind of to start the conversation. So I do want to cover some very foundational things as well as leading into, kind of overall mastery. But by mastery, we'll talk about what that means here shortly. So you already know who I am. If you don't know who I am, you're probably better off. So that's fine. If you want to reach out to me later on, I am the Senior Director of Field Engineering at Modern. My emails are there. I'm on every social that I've been presented with. I don't always frequent them, but I'm probably on them more frequently than my emails. So please do reach out to me afterward if you have any questions, comments, or feedback. Know that if I didn't cover a topic as well as you'd like it, I probably didn't cover it as well as I'd like it either, because there's just not enough time. But again, this is a start of a conversation because we have like this much time here together, but we have practically unlimited time afterwards. So consider this the starter to our conversation. So again, you know all that stuff. Sam already hit the pilot stuff. The other stuff you already probably know. If not, again, we can talk about that later as well. I did write a book. I did a thing. So I do have a little bit of background in Spring. I was on the Spring team for a number of years and still love Spring. Love other technologies as well, but Spring is kind of what I use by and large to get the job done when it comes to my development work, which admittedly is not as much as it used to be, but I still get in and sling code. So check it out if you're so inclined. So let's have a think a little bit. Now, I have to tell you that I had my goal with any kind of conversation or any kind of a talk is to think, and to incorporate things as the ground shifts. And we talked about this earlier as well, that in technology, and especially, when it comes to AI or anything really in the last few years, the pace is accelerating. So the ground does tend to move under your feet. So you have to be quick, right? And that can either be terribly frustrating or just exhilarating. And I choose exhilaration. But it does lead to some interesting things. Like right before I jumped on here, I saw this. Now, this was on LinkedIn just minutes ago. And it was talking about AI spending lifts the entire U.S. economy. It's not just, a quarter of all recent economic growth owes to software and computer equipment. So this is kind of huge. So I guess the good news is it's got a lot of people's attention. The bad news is it's got a lot of people's attention. So, as with all things, I heard years ago somebody said technology gives you with one hand and takes away with the other. And our goal, frankly, in my opinion, is to be open-minded skeptical of everything. We should be completely open-minded to anything, even if it comes across as a crazy idea or a sensible idea, or we're not quite ready for that, but we're building toward it. But we should be skeptical. We should test things. We should prove them out and evaluate them because whatever the case may be, if it's ready for prime time or if we can see it on the horizon, we should be preparing for that, but with our eyes wide open, right? So how does one define mastery? Because the whole idea behind this chat was just to kind of master things. And I kind of break it down as knowing the right questions to ask, knowing how to answer them. And by questions, what I mean are the who, what, where, when, why, and lastly, how. So if you have all of that, you have some level of mastery of whatever topic you might be considering. I have to apologize. I mentioned earlier that I went to an event a couple of weeks ago and I got a summer cold. And then I came back home and I live in the central US, so Midwest, and it's very, very fertile in terms of pollen. So I rolled right into seasonal allergies. And I'm not really sure where the summer cold ended and the seasonal allergies picked up, or if I have both, but I'm struggling with throat and sound. So I do have throat lozenge, I have hot tea, and we'll get through this. So, but I do think it's instructive to understand that, like every other new thing that came before it, while AI differs a lot in what it is, it doesn't differ a lot in its introduction and its incorporation into things. So you kind of see two extremes and a lot of ground in between, right? Some people say AI is useless, and some people say AI can do everything. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go. So I kind of look at that, and I don't know how many of you folks were theater kids when you were young. I'm hearing some chuckles, so apparently there's at least one. But there's a musical that Fiddler on the Roof, and one guy said, somebody says something, and the guy says, "You are right," and somebody else says something contradictory, and he says, "And you are right," and then somebody else questions him and says, "They cannot both be right," and he looks at them thoughtfully and he says, "You are also right." And I think that's important to realize that sometimes things that seem contradictory, when you tease them out, aren't necessarily entirely contradictory. Doesn't mean they can't have contradictory elements, but I think it bears some deeper thought. So I love this story. Early days of iPhones, and anyone. This is Steve Jobs, head of Apple Computer back then. Now it's just Apple Inc. But he was known for having what they called a reality distortion field. So when anything went wrong, or when he wanted to particularly push a perspective or a narrative or whatever, he could bend reality. And people would walk away saying, he said all this stuff and I love it, but I can't see how it aligns with reality. Well, one of the iPhone releases, when they came out with this, and this is a perfect case study, you can look it up on your own, but just to give you a teaser, when it came out, there were a lot of reports of people dropping calls, just unexplainably dropping calls. And this was brand new, great tech. And of course, Apple initially, denied it. And then eventually it came out. There were enough people who filed a class action suit, and they got enough engineers looking at it in the right way that they said, "Oh, I see." If you notice in the edge of that picture, I'm pointing up here, but wherever it is for you, there's a band around the outside. Like most phones, actually. I have a case on mine, so I can't see, but I think it probably still has that type of a band. But the band wasn't a full metal band that went around it. There was a little break in where it separated the bottom part of the metal band from the top part, which housed the antenna. And if you put your thumb right across that little break, it would short out the call. I'm probably misspeaking here. It wasn't necessarily a short, an electrical short, but it would terminate the call. So at some point, after they finally had to acknowledge that this is actually a problem, Steve Jobs came out and basically said, in fact, I think the exact words were, "You're holding it wrong. Just change the way you're holding it." And of course, that didn't go over really well, even with his reality distortion field. So eventually, Apple had to do a little bit of a PR cleanup and whatnot. But the thing that I want to, I guess, impart on you or make you think about a little is that many of the frustrations with the folks who say AI is worthless or AI is useless are because maybe we're not holding it right. There are certain things that it does really well. There are certain things that it doesn't do so well. And maybe we're exploring the wrong use cases. So I just leave that in your back of your mind. One of the big problems with AI and literally any new technology is, I love this quote, and it's been attributed to various different people at various different times, but to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And by the way, that doesn't apply exclusively to men. It's a human condition. But the problem is, and I guess, again, universal problem, is that when we have a solution that works really well, when we encounter a new problem, we kind of tend to fit it to the solution we have at hand. And I think not just for AI, but certainly in this regard, it's a real shame because we wind up applying a really good tool to really bad, to come up with a really bad outcome. And again, we need to think. We need to apply our brains to determine where it makes the most sense, where we have the most potential for success before we apply any particular solution to a problem. So there is a lot of hype and hyperbole, and I want to kind of, again, go into this, not to bash the hyperbole or the hype or anybody who espouses it, but just to make ourselves aware of some of the things that challenges that we face, and maybe look at ways to address them, or at least keep them in the back of our mind so we're aware of the potholes as we come up on them. Everyone's still okay? Because all I can see are slides.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, all right. So if you're trying to raise a hand, I'm sorry I don't see it until we get out of the slides, and then I might be able to spot it. But here we go. So again, AI can do anything, and of late it's been agentic AI can do anything. And I think that does a terrible misservice because there are a lot of useful workflows that have been out there for a long time that we now ascribe agentic AI to. And they literally are very useful corporate workflows or organizational workflows or personal workflows that we have. And sometimes we sprinkle a little AI in there to make the formatting a little better, and we say it's an agentic AI workflow. It isn't. I mean, let's call it what it is. It's a proven workflow that does a great job. That's fine. But let's apply the term precisely in areas where it makes a lot of sense to do so, and not in areas that it just basically becomes polishing. This is one of my absolute pet peeves. So, oh boy, where to start? So most of the time, most of us who go into a technical field whatsoever, I feel pretty confident in saying this, it's because we like to bring order to chaos. And one of the ways that we do that is to establish certain tests, and we can verify those tests are successful or they are not. And we should have a very high, a reasonableness test, if you will. So we should be able to verify yes or no, does this work, does this not? And generally speaking, we can do that with a high degree of certainty in almost every case, but not so with AI. It frustrates me a little bit when people talk about doing AI testing, because inevitably what comes up is, how do you test an AI response? Well, we take the response, we take the question, the response, we feed it to another AI, and we say, does this make sense? Okay, so let's say that I'm known for being a pathological liar, and you say, well, how far is it to Chicago? And I tell you, and I just make up a number, and so you ask another pathological liar, how far is it to Chicago? And Mark said it was 1,700 miles, and yeah, it sounds right. Okay, what have you established? You've established some level of agreement between two entities which have an element, a known and an advertised element of hallucination. So I don't tell you that to startle you, but I feel like we've lost a little bit of our rigor and precision when it comes to testing. I don't have a specific answer for that. I've seen a lot of times people work with providing kind of stuffing the prompt, if you will, providing definite answers to definite questions and then testing on that. To me, that seems, again, a very artificial construct. But that's something I think to keep our eye on. Will it get better? Almost certainly. I certainly hope so. But that is the current state of things. And to me, that falls heavily under the area of hyperbole. So this is one that I find very interesting, because you hear this a lot. I think Jensen Huang was the first one who said this. You won't lose your job to AI, but you'll lose your job to someone using AI. A good friend of mine just said this a week or two ago on a LinkedIn post that he threw out there. And I thought, yeah, but I mean, this is it's a basic, obvious statement when you think about it. So let's do a thought experiment. Replace each instance of the word AI with something else. I'm going to use the internet, right? You won't lose your job to the internet, but you'll lose your job to someone using the internet. It's an obvious, it's a truism, right? I mean, we as technologists, whether we're the junior developer all the way up to whatever, we use every tool at our disposal. We want to use every tool to its fullest at our disposal. So this it sounds very high thinking. It really isn't. So of course, we're going to use those tools. We also hear sometimes we won't need junior developers because after all, the AI serves almost as an intern or a junior developer. But ultimately, of course, that rolls up to we won't need senior developers, because then you can just give a coding agent to a junior developer and they'll be just as good as a senior developer. And then anyone can develop an application. So I will cover this a bit more as we go along, but ultimately what it comes down to is there is a portion of the application development lifecycle, which is developing it, right? Getting the code out there and making sure it builds properly and kind of answers the mail when it comes to what people want. But then you have to deploy it. I often say that until you deploy an app, it's a toy. It's a thought experiment itself, because until it hits production, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't serve any purpose. But once it gets to production, and this is something we at Modern talk about all the time, as soon as you push it to production, it's out of date. The next day there's a dependency update, there's a CVE, there's a whatever the case may be. There's something that is identified that makes your code stale as soon as you push it. So you have to make something maintainable. You have to be able to adapt it when requirements change. And I like to kind of roll into this. These are a couple of things that I found fairly recently, a couple of 3 weeks ago. And ultimately what it comes down to is, and I know this will shock everyone, that the more precise you are when it comes to any kind of LLM or coding agent, et cetera, the better results you get. I saw something by Jessica Kerr, who is also from St. Louis area here, just a couple of days ago, talking about that patterns, programming patterns, are the new development language for coding assistants, because you can clearly and concisely specify what you're after. And there are several instances like that, to where I kind of go to the bottom left of the screen. Just learn to code, then you can create real software by vibe coding. So these are very useful. They're very helpful, but the more you know, the better they work. Crazy, right? Who would have seen that coming? There's more. We won't go into more. So again, don't want anyone to get the wrong idea here. I'm very, very pro AI. I feel like we're just scratching the surface. We're going to do amazing things, but there are certainly areas where it works better than others, like any other tool you have at your disposal, in that it makes more sense to apply those in some cases first, and in other cases eventually, right? Determinism versus non-determinism. This is one area that I think comes up quite a lot. If anybody's tried to do well, let me back up here, because I want to launch into something else first. There's so many thoughts I want to share on this. Sometimes determinism, meaning you can expect the consistent results regardless, all the time, repeatedly. That's absolutely essential. Sometimes non-determinism, where you have some variation, is a definite selling point. I kind of use the examples of an online ordering system for stuff like Amazon or whatever the case may be. If you have a recommendation engine, and by the way, that goes back to, we've had recommendation engines long before the age of AI, but they're hopefully better now, right? So we used to joke about Amazon. You buy a wallet, and for the next week, you just get it. Hey, would you like to look at this wallet? Well, no, I just bought my wallet. I only need one, right? But non-determinism allows, an online ordering system, the suggestion engine, the recommendation engine, to maybe offer some varying suggestions. So if I go out and look at a wallet, I'll just stay on that example since I started it. Maybe bad choice, because now I can't think of anything similar. But maybe it'll suggest belts or new shoes or whatever. And maybe the next time I come back to that, because I think, I got a phone call, I'll look at it tomorrow, whatever. And then I come back and I look at the wallet again, and it says, hey, maybe you'd like, I don't know, new pants, new trousers, whatever. So it mixes things up. There is some non-determinism. You won't get the same exact recommendations every time. That's good, right? That's a plus. That's an area where something in the AI construct of non-determinism works really well. However, let's say you take your car to the shop, and your mechanic says, hey, look, your alternator's bad. You have a Toyota. I can order you an alternator. I'll go ahead and put in the order. We'll have it in. We'll fix it. You'll be on the road by tomorrow evening. Great. So you call back the next day because you haven't heard from your mechanic, and you say, what was up with the alternator? And your mechanic tells you that when they went to order the alternator online, the recommendation engine said, you probably need a replacement wiring harness for this too. So go ahead and order it with the alternator. Mechanic says, yeah, that checks out. Opens the box when it comes in the next day, and it's a Toyota alternator, but it's a Ford wiring harness, because non-deterministic. You get these recommendations that aren't always consistent. They sometimes hallucinate. This is a problem, right? So you need to figure out where it makes sense to have determinism and where it doesn't. One thing that we talk a lot about at Modern in determinism is to be able to run the same recipe deterministically across hundreds or thousands of repositories. You don't want any kind of off scripting going on there. So you want both scalability, but you want consistency. And that's just one small example of that whole non-determinism or probabilism versus determinism as well. Stop and take a drink here. Throat, it's starting to get even wispier. So, so it's
I've learned to make lozenges and everything, like part of your standard conference travel kit.
Yes, I do that too, and I actually have one here if it really goes badly. But I find if I put the lozenge in versus just taking sips, then I wind up talking around it. So I'm trying to avoid that if I can. So fit for purpose applications, we're probably seeing. In fact, everybody in any kind of size organization is getting some pressure from higher up to apply AI in various different ways wherever it makes sense. And sometimes that can feel very indiscriminate, right? But it's our job as technologists to say, well, look, if we want a successful pilot, if we want a successful, pardon the term, successful outing for this, we want to choose where we apply this, fit for purpose applications. And that means fit for purpose today, because even if we see something on the horizon where it looks like this is going to work really well for this, if we can't have a reasonable expectation of success, we probably should shelve that and apply it in areas, again, where it makes sense now. I won't belabor that point, but I do think I've spoken with a lot of people in a lot of different organizations, and I always hate to say the term "just like other technologies," because AI is nothing like other technologies. However, any kind of new entry to the technological tool belt, many times accompanies with it this kind of sprinkle a little of whatever on everything. And the good news is that in many cases we quickly sift out and figure out what works really well. The bad news is there's this large swath of ground that we've just wasted. We sprinkled it on things that we probably should have known better than to do. So pick your successes, pick the areas that you use to apply this to first, and then build out where it makes sense. Guardrails and vector checking. This is one of another small pet peeve, and I love to throw this question out, and I won't wait for an answer, but I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. But can you think of any other product, to where when things go right, it's given all the credit, but when things go wrong, the blame falls on you? And part of this is legit, right? Part of it is it's unfortunate. It really is. But from day one, we've seen that AIs can hallucinate. So I say AI in general because I don't like using the term LLM, because we have SLMs and we have other constructs. We have agentic combinations of AI elements in some capacity working together. So I just generalize and say AI. So forgive me for that. But AI is known for hallucinating. And so, if you apply just for fun, turn an AI loose on a repository and ask it to modernize, ask it to change something, ask it to do something or other. And if you do that 10 times, you'll get 10 different results. 6 to 8 of them won't work. A couple of them will work, but they may give you unpredictable outcomes. A couple of them do work, but they're not consistent. And it's incumbent upon us to apply some guardrails, to apply some vector checking, and to make sure that when we do something, we contain that and ensure that some level of success. I always go back to and I tested this a week or two ago to see if it was still the case. When Amazon first started rolling out their recommendation AI, I'll put it that way. You could go into that on a page looking at a wallet and say, give me a recipe for banana bread, or explain the chemical composition of whatever, and it would do that, because initially there was just no guardrail in place for that. So obviously, for the costing and for ensuring safety and things of that nature, you need some kind of guardrails in place for doing that. It's just not entirely there, and that goes back to non-determinism. So again, we're important to keep in that loop as well. Disposable code versus durable code. Charity Majors, I think, was the first one who brought this up, but it's been expanded upon and certainly repeated a lot since. But I love her breakout of this, because there's a lot of code that doesn't necessarily have to be the durable code that your enterprise rests on and you make millions and millions of dollars, or that keeps your entire organization afloat and satisfies your customers. But there are a lot of areas that disposable code is perfectly valid. And I think in the technology field, we tend to gatekeep a lot. So does anybody, if anybody's worked in a large corporation, they know that, there's the Herald and accounting stories. So Herald and accounting created a spreadsheet that the entire department runs on. And if anything ever happens to those macros in that spreadsheet, everybody's doomed. So at some point that becomes a real problem, but maybe it's run the accounting department there for, 6 years, maybe 10. I always kind of joke that, we have a problem with this. Can someone from IT fix this? Because Harold maintained this for 5 years and he's been gone for 5 years and now it broke. So I do think there's an area where disposable code from folks who don't have a lot of background in I say tech in general, but comp sci, don't have a lot of maybe language constructs in terms of patterns and things of that nature. But I think there's a value that comes to that. But we shouldn't mistake that for the durable code that we use, that the entire world runs on. It has to be secured. It has to be multi-tenant. It has to be deployed around the globe and available and responsive, and et cetera. So I do think over time you're going to see more of a blending, but that is something to keep in mind for the now. There is a difference between building software with AI and building AI into software. Building software with AI, I think a lot of us use things like Claude Code, Code Whisperer, Junie, Replit, et cetera. And I think that's something that's a very useful construct. We've seen that, again, working into applying it in the places where it makes sense, that you can have a near zero cost recipe development, at least start, right? It doesn't mean you'll get all the way there, but it really gets close to that, much closer than just starting from a blank slate. That doesn't mean that you want to apply that non-deterministically to all your repositories, but if you're looking for a way to modernize and migrate your code, it makes a lot of sense to start with something like a coding assistant because it can get you pretty far down the road based on the inputs that you provide it, once again, with quality inputs. Building AI into software, again, it makes sense to use that where it makes the most sense to do. I do find it interesting, and see if anybody's maybe kind of noodled on this before, but some of the best parts of AI are where it interacts with deterministic options. So things like RAG, retrieval augmented generation, MCP, model context protocol, open rewrite, when you have areas that you can apply deterministic and very focused, specific, repeatable constructs, you can plug that into AI and it makes it all better. So it makes a lot of sense to blend the two when it, again, in the areas for the best outcome, certain areas. So let's see it in practice. Wow, we're really close on time. I'm going to close out of this. Do we really just have like 8 minutes left?
I mean, no one's going to kick us off, but it all depends on the patience of our viewers, how long they want to stick around.
All right. So I guess let me take a poll here. I'm going to throw this back over here. I guess what it comes down. Oh boy, yeah, Inception. Here we go. Let me stop sharing. No, let me just move this over. Let me move it over. I don't want to Inception it. So I have code written. I can live code it, but I lose time doing that, and I would really rather focus on the content. This is all my code. It's out in my repos, and I guess let me just show you the code and give you kind of a little bit of a hint on what we're going to be doing. So
yeah, let's see what you got.
So this is my POM. I sometimes use Gradle, sometimes Maven, just to aggravate everyone equally, I guess. So, and by the way, when you're using Gradle, surely you're using Kotlin with Gradle. Please tell me that. Anyway,
I do, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, I've got just a few dependencies. I start out with this. Let's see if I moved that. Let's see if I go over there. So I started with this with the Spring initializer. I just selected a few dependencies to bring in, and those are Spring Boot Starter Web. So I've got my ability to create APIs. I've got a vector store. I'm using OpenAI from OpenAI. I also have an MCP client dependency here. I have Quadrant, if you prefer. I guess they like to call it Quadrant, although again, this gets down to the how do we name things problem in comp sci, but here we are. And then the Tika document reader. And I won't have time to, even with the not live coding, to show all this today. But we can come back to this another time if everyone wants to. So I do actually have a few things in here in the application.yaml, which is just kind of the sensible default place that you put things in a Spring Boot application. The application name, that's pretty default. But I also have an MCP server that I'm pointing to. You can also put this in a server's configuration file. I have it configured for both. Well, probably not in this app, but you can do it either way. I have some things for generating an image, which there's no way we're going to get to today, but c'est la vie. Vector store I've got showing for Quadrant and et cetera. So I just created a very, very basic application here. So I have some basic things, and I'm going to back this out. I'm going to just do that, and we'll close this. It doesn't really matter, but we'll come back to it. So I'm creating a logger. I'm injecting, or potentially at some point you're injecting a chat memory. So this is an in-memory construct. You can actually save this to a database as well, but I'm not. Again, it depends on the fit for purpose, right? I have a data store bean, a vector store bean, excuse me, speech model, image model, and then a list of MCP clients. I had to find a couple of constants effectively here for my directory in and out. And then I inject those, constructor injection. You don't actually have a chat client bean that's created in Spring by default, Spring AI. But you do have a builder, and then from the builder, I just do a builder.build. Later, we'll come back to our advisors and do something with the chat memory, again, assuming we don't run out of time. I'm actually going to skip some of the simpler stuff. I don't want to be bereft of context, but there are different things that you can return from Spring AI in our interaction with an LLM. One is just a string, right? And you do that by calling the content method, right? So from our client. You can also return the chat response. That includes a little bit more information. It includes multiple responses. And then, of course, the primary one. It also includes token information and things like that. If we have time, I'll come back to that. But that's kind of the key bits. And there's also a way to return an entity. And we'll get to that momentarily. But let's jump into a couple of things here. So when we're talking about use cases, these are some things that I found both fun and useful. And I keep looking over here because I have you folks over here, and I have my code over here. So apologies on back and forth here. But I'm going to go ahead and boom. And I'm going to, let's see, where did I put this? Let's see, dev. Scratch run-throughs. Okay, well, that's fine. So scratch run-throughs. Yep, that works. Let's see, is that? Oh, bother. Let's see. Yep, we're good. All right, so that's good. So now I'm here. If I look here, I can just do a maven w spring boot run, and we will run this. I do this externally because that way I have my my secrets hidden. Always good to keep it that way, right? So if I just do an 8080, of course, that comes back with the string here. You can see, I'll back up here. And it's I have a default parameter for what is the meaning of life, and it comes back with a nice little response, which, by the way, looks different than I got the last time I ran this yesterday. So this, again, non-determinism at work. So if we want to do our template, so if I do /template, and let me back up here, and let's say a topic or type, let's do a ROI analysis summary, and topic equals code modernization at scale. Now this should be fun, right? I do want to point out that I have a couple things here. This method shows that I've got a request parameter of type and topic, and I'm using a template. So I'm just going to plug in, write a, in this case, ROI summary about code modernization at scale, 1,000-word limit. I'm plugging that in using parameters to my prompt user spec. I'm calling it and returning a string. So yeah, this looks pretty good. And that takes a little bit, as you might imagine, but this is not terrible. Now, if we want to do things a little more quickly, we can say, let's say do a, and this is very versatile. I like to kind of show this off again because it is fun, but it is actually something you can see a great deal of use just by changing a few parameters. And now we have a poem. Well, that took way too long. So let's see if we can just shorten this. Type equals haiku. Yes, legacy code sleeps, awakened by fresh design, future dreams in bytes. I don't know. There can't be a better selling point for like code modernization at scale. I can't imagine. Pardon me. So, interestingly, I do want to go back here really quickly to my slides. So a lot of times, and I want to point out something else interesting here. So let me do a play. So I actually changed, I overloaded the acronym here from Retrieval Augmented Generation to Art Augmented Goldmine, because the advantages of RAG are the ability to pull in unstructured information and to do similarity searches on it. Jonathan, our founder, kind of challenged my thinking on this the other day, and I didn't even intend to do it, but it was really great because anytime somebody kind of rattles your assumptions, it's really good for brain growth, right? And he said, RAG, and I'll paraphrase him, so I'm probably going to miss the nuance parts, but he said RAG is kind of, he didn't say descending or declining, but he said really the going forward path is in tool calling, is in MCP. And I got to thinking about that. RAG is kind of a subset of that. And I'll show you an example of how that all fits together, at least to some extent, here in a minute. But it really kind of made me reorient my thinking, and I love it. But where we get to, I mentioned the non-determinism and determinism, where we can get in some of the value or the frustrations with LLMs and any kind of AI is that there's a certain cutoff. And I know agentic, where you can reach out and do different things, helps solve that. But a lot of the way they solve that is through tool calling, right? They use some kind of external interface to help add some determinism to the mix. So if you're looking at, let's say, internal documents, I use FAA documents because any kind of organization, any kind of domain, you probably have these massive loads of documents and inputs that are used to guide your decision making, your claim approval, your acceptance of a contract, or whatever the case may be. And I can't think of any better domain to mimic that than the government, because goodness knows the FAA loves their documentation, and the National Transportation Safety Board, which FAA falls under. So I brought all of these into a RAG data store, and I'm querying based on that, because what I wanted to be able to do is to get specific information that applies to my specific use case and not just generally. So and the one thing I wanted to point out here is that when it comes to Spring AI, let me see if I can do this here. Did that zoom for everyone?
Yes.
Good. Oh, it works. Love it. So you can just use a new question and answer advisor and pass it to Vector Store. That's awesome. It works. And this is effectively the same thing right now. But what I want to point out is that there's a retrieval augmentation advisor that then you can pass a document retriever that doesn't have to be a vector store. In this case, it is, because that's the sole implementation at this point in time. But if you go here and you look, all it requires is a document retriever of some kind. So the ability to extend this and to use a different tool, if you will, to provide that is pretty great. And it's already in place there in terms of an abstract class or an interface that you can build off of, I should say. So this is kind of leaning into that whole thing that Jonathan was referring to, which is RAG is not the be all end all. It is we're kind of leaning into an area of greater utility in terms of tools. So again, apologies where I missed the nuance on that, but again, this is kind of the stuff that sticks in the back of my mind. Right now, this is functionally equivalent to this, and I even use this later, and you'll see that there's no effective difference. So I do want to go out and do a demo here, or a query here. So if I, error typing is important. What are the key error speeds in their V references? So I'm just going to ask this of GPT-4o, I guess it is, that's the default. I didn't change it for this purposes of this demo. But I'm just going to ask what are key air speeds in their V references. And this, if you're familiar with aviation, you understand that this makes sense from an aviation perspective, but it gives you a little bit of information very generically. So VS0 is the stall speed and landing configuration. Sometimes they call that dirty configuration with flaps down, landing gear extended. VS1 is in a clean condition, so you don't have your flaps down, you don't have your landing gear extended. You have VX, best angle of climb, VY, best rate of climb, so on and so forth. And that's pretty useful, right? But it doesn't give you anything specific. So it's more of a generic thing. So if I ask the same thing, but I actually use Spring AI to have an advisor of my vector store, which has all of these great documents from the FAA and my personal, my airplane owners, my pilots and owners handbook, the POH they call it. It comes back with specific numbers. And you can literally live and die by these numbers. So this is 44 knots indicated airspeed for the VS0. VS1 is 50 knots. And these are right. These are all right. And they're very specific to my aircraft. So this is very important that you see it. Now, that you have this opportunity to do this. Now, I did create some entities. And if you see the next one, I've got where you can return, again, from Spring AI, an entity by providing it a particular entity. And this, I created a record of key airspeeds, which just has the aircraft type, the aircraft name, and a list of key airspeeds, which then I can go there and pull that up. And it's, again, another record. Speed measurement, V designation description. So I can go back here, and we can see that now I have something very neatly configured and marshaled into the proper structure here. So, yeah. Let's see. We're a little over, but I've got a couple more things I really want to show you. So, conversationally, because a lot of times the first question people ask when they're kind of getting started with this is, that's great, but if I roll this out to my department, to my team, whatever, then how am I going to make sure that we don't have any cross pollination? We don't mess up and share data that we shouldn't be sharing. So I'm going to just do this. Dairy. Yeah. So does anyone recognize this? This is going to be Legend. Wait for it.
Dairy.
It's
No
from
one?
How I Met Your Mother.
Oh yes. So good. We have a
Yeah,
winner. Okay.
Barney, right?
Yes, Barney. I love a good quote, and so movies, TV doesn't matter. I just it's just good stuff. So yeah, that's he was known for saying this will be legend. Wait for it, dairy. So hopefully this will be legendary here. So let me stop this and run this again. So conversation. So how do we determine that we can keep things separate? Now I'm using a very simple option here. I'm just let me back up here and show you. I've got a message chat memory advisor that I'm using to keep track of the conversation. But then I also, in this endpoint, I have a conversation ID that I'm passing in, or not, because the default is literally default, right? So I'm providing that as an advisor spec. And if it's not provided, then it just defaults to default and life goes merrily along. Now, you wouldn't do this in a production application, right? You'd have some kind of a session, a token, or whatever. But again, this is for the purposes of a demo, keeps things nice and simple. So if I do the, I'm going to ask Ford. So what are all models of vans made by Ford Motor Company? Humor me. So if you look at this, by the way, I provided no conversation ID, so it just did the default. There's a Ford Transit. There's a Ford Transit Connect. There's an E-Series. There's a Transit Custom. You see they kind of got stuck in a rut here. Tornado Custom, Tornado Connect. Wow, they're just really bad at this, I guess. But anyway, so they have various different models. So if I just say, hey, what are all the models of aircraft made by Piper Aircraft? And I provide a conversation ID, so this won't cross-pollinate, right? So I'm going to feed this in a different request, and we'll see what kind of aircraft are made by Piper. And we see that we get this nice list back. Now, where am I going with this? Well, if I just say, tell me about the Aerostar, and I don't want the conversation ID, let's just remove that. So tell me about the Aerostar. And in this case, since I provided no conversation ID, it goes to the default, and it should maintain its structure and its separation. And you see that it did. Of course, the Ford Aerostar was a minivan produced by Ford Motor Company, et cetera, and so on. And if I add back that conversation ID equals XYZ123, I believe. Again, very generic. Tell me about the Aerostar. We maintain that distinction, that separation, as well as maintain that conversation. So we see that the Piper Aerostar is a family twin engine aircraft, et cetera. So very useful, again, to make sure, not with this particular implementation, but with this structure for an implementation, that you can maintain that distinction. I do want to get into a little bit of the MCP. So if you see, I've got a city query here. I'm just asking what are some weather appropriate activities in Chicago right now. That's the default value, but we'll provide it whatever. And literally to use this, I pass in the tool callbacks, the sync MCP toolback provider, which again, I provided a particular MCP server I have out here. That's just a Spring Boot application that I've done a native compilation on. Everything's sitting out there just waiting for us to tap into it. And let's do that. So, oh no, let's see. So /MCP. Nope. What did I name that? Oh, city query. City query. So that's fine. So let's ask about Buenos Aires. Let's try that. So we want to know weather appropriate activities. By the way, interestingly enough, when you ask what a weather appropriate activity is in a particular place, if you have no way of determining what the weather is at that time, you're probably going to get back some really strange answers. But once again, we have an MCP service, which is very, it's pretty simple, really. But it's I say, look, it's 66 Fahrenheit or 19 Celsius. So here's what you could do currently in Buenos Aires. So if you go back and say, well, what about, let's say St. Louis, where I am. And this, again, is where I really encourage people to kind of look at the advantages of AI as well as the advantages of deterministic tools and use them both together. So, currently unable to fetch real-time data. That's bad. Let's try something else. Let's go back to Chicago. Maybe it's a fluke on St. Louis. Maybe there's something out with the weather feed or something. Oh, yeah, something bad happened, I guess. Well, it worked once. Works on my machine.
At least it's deterministic. Then.
Yeah, I mean, if the deterministic server is giving you an error, then it's giving you an error.
Oh, that is just sad. Well, I know I haven't exceeded my limit, but because obviously, well, maybe I did after that one.
It worked once. Huh?
Well, that's certainly disappointing, but we won't stop there. Okay.
But yeah, definitely see the value in combining the two, where you have reliable inputs when they show up, and then.
Yeah, so I always also like to do like a multimedia. So let's see if I can do this /mm/mm image path. So here is just a general explain this image to me. I have a wake turbulence image. This is something that all pilots fear, depending on the size of the aircraft. If you fly behind a larger aircraft, you can actually have your aircraft flip. It's very easy to avoid in terms of, you literally just provide more spacing, more time. But off the end of wingtips, you have wingtip vortices and wake turbulence that spills out. It can really ruin your day or every day after. And that's fine. That tells you that, here's what it's seeing. By the way, let me try image cat and see if I can do this. See if this works. This should work. And of course, I didn't get the first slash. Let's see if this works. Yes, that's fine. Yeah, so this is what you're looking at. So this gives you an idea of what you might, how it interprets it. The image is a diagram, which again is very useful. Let's see here. I like to use this with mmrag because that lets me go back and do a little bit more. Oops, don't want that one. And let's see, what are the parameters here? So that's the image, and then tell me everything you can about this image. Let's do that. That's just the message. All right. And message equals tell me everything you can about this image within the context of safer piloting. And let's see what it comes back with, because this does both. It interprets the image, but then it also feeds that interpretation to our data, our internal documents, and it says, what else can I provide of particular relevance? Oh, I don't know. Well, you know what? You just check out. Very non-deterministic.
Surprisingly honest.
Surprisingly, yes. I actually, do I have something in here? I think I do. Let's see. Get response using our data. No, I actually don't. Interesting. So yeah, I thought I'd plug something in saying, just tell me you don't know if you don't know, but no, I don't. Okay. So I do have some other stuff, but again, this is very kind of thought-provoking. You can do translations. I actually have it converting to speech and outputting the speech in different languages, creating doc audio. I actually created this before Google did their podcast thing. I'm really sad that I didn't publish this beforehand, but where you could take a document and turn it into a podcast. Although I didn't have the two hosts going back and forth, so version 1. Image, you can create images. Might as well just for fun. But let's see. Yeah, we'll just do that. And that'll create an image. We'll see what we get back. This is always good for a wrap up here. And then we'll come back and just finish off the key bits. So image cat, and we'll take this. Seems like it should work. No, I can't do that from here. Okay, well, anyway, I'll just go the hard way. Let's see. Tab. There we go. There we go. Okay, so nice way to wrap up. Okay, so let's go back to the slides and we'll call an end of it. So in conclusion, yeah, non-determinism is a strength and a weakness, like everything else. The key is knowing when to use what and knowing how to integrate the two. You should leverage AI to accomplish tasks where it excels and lean into the deterministic options for things like consistency, repeatability, auditability, scale, cost, etc. We're very fond of talking about this in Modern because these are areas that you really you can go bananas and cost your organization a lot of money and again lean into some very bad liability and things like that. So it makes sense to apply it logically, AI logically, and then lean into the deterministic options where it makes more sense to use those. But for the best of all worlds, integrate them all, and don't be afraid to use all the tools in your tool belt. We have all these tools, we have all these toys. Not using them is just crazy. So, with that, thanks, and we'll go back to our conversation. Let me stop sharing so we can see what all is happening here.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Mark. I feel like I have a better idea of how I would get started using if I wanted to expose some language model based capability through a web server. That was a very convenient primer on how to go about doing that. I hadn't personally looked at Spring AI before, so that's pretty handy. Wonder. I don't have something top of mind that I wanted to construct a web server for to use AI. Maybe maybe I should make something that would answer questions about Gradle or dependency management. Have it respond to some Slack messages for me.
If only we had an AI element within our platform that would do some really amazing things as well. So, yeah,
If only, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I say that, and for those of you not in the know, we actually do. So, if you want to know more, ping our folks, and we're happy to talk about it. But
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think we should, as we've gone over time pretty generously, let's just go ahead and end it there. Thank you so much for coming on, Mark, and sharing that with all of us. As always, we've been your hosts, Sam and Tim, and we'll see everybody next week for another topic that I don't remember off the top of my head right now, but it's going to be great, I'm sure. Tim, do you know what we're talking about next week?
We're going to be talking about data tables, how to extract data tables, find data in your code, and use a recipe to do that.
Excellent, excellent. Potentially one such deterministic input to a retrieval
Absolutely.
augmented generative system.
Absolutely.
All
So,
right. Well,
hope to
until
see you
then,
all then.
good, good to see you all then. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.